Marlene Jenkins woke before sunrise most mornings, long before the city stirred. She slipped out of bed, her bare feet touching the cool wood floor of her small but cozy Detroit home. In the narrow kitchen, she brewed coffee in a worn glass pot that still carried specks of ground beans from the day before. She liked the quiet hours before anyone else woke. In those moments, she felt the gentle stir of possibility, the chance to shape someone's day with a kind word or a helpful hand. After pouring a steaming mug, Marlene moved to the living room, where stacks of papers waited on the table. Flyers for youth programs, schedules for neighborhood cleanups, and notes for city council meetings spread across the surface. She scanned each paper carefully, adjusting details and adding reminders. At 42, she carried a reputation for tireless work, organizing after-school clubs, coaching a girls' basketball team in the park down the street, and meeting with local leaders to push for better streetlights and safer crossings. Neighbors often joked that Marlene worked 2 full-time jobs, one for herself, and one for the entire neighborhood. By 6 o'clock, Jackson stirred in his small room at the end of the hallway. He was a gentle boy with fair skin and light curls, a soft smile always dancing on his lips. When he was born, Marlene had held him close and whispered, "You are wanted, Jackson. You are loved." The sweet sound of his early cries had filled her heart with a joy she thought she might never know. He was her son by choice. She cherished every moment with him. Each morning after breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast smeared with strawberry jam, his favorite, Jackson walked to the table in his bright red t-shirt and gray sweatpants. He sat at the small wooden chair, legs swinging as he slurped his orange juice. While Marlene packed his lunch and handed him a worn backpack, he chattered about simple things, the book he was reading in school, a math puzzle that puzzled him, or a new song he learned to sing. Marlene listened with undivided attention, nodding and smiling, her eyes bright with interest. Before they left, Marlene hugged him tight. "Have a great day, sweetheart," she said. Jackson hugged her back, wrapping his slender arms around her waist. "Love you, Mom," he whispered. Marlene smiled, pushing a stray lock of hair from his forehead. She watched him cross the small front yard and head toward the bus stop. It's already waving even before the bus rounded the corner. Marlene locked the front door behind her and made her way to the community center. She arrived early and walked in through the side door, greeted by the soft echo of her footsteps. The center smelled of fresh paint and the faint trace of cooking from the shared kitchen, where volunteers prepared dinner for families in need. In the main room, folding chairs and tables waited to be set up. Marlene arranged them in neat rows, stepping back to admire her work before moving to the next task. Today, she would teach a workshop on basic computer skills for older adults. Last week, she had helped Mrs. Rodriguez learn to send emails and upload photos to share with her grandchildren. This week, she planned to show her how to use online banking safely. Marlene was patient, her clear voice guiding people through each click and keystroke. She smiled when Mrs. Liu's eyes lit up at seeing her own balance on the screen. For Marlene, these small victories brought a deep satisfaction by midday. The workshop ended, and volunteers served sandwiches and salad in the hallway. Marlene sat at a long table with a group of seniors listening to stories of their youth. The families they left behind, the jobs they once held, the dreams they still carried. Marlene offered words of encouragement, reminding them that learning never stops, and that it was never too late to try something new. As the lunch rush quieted, Marlene stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The sun was bright and warm, shining on the cracks in the pavement and the tall grass pushing through. She walked around the building's corner, where a small garden bloomed with marigolds and basil. She bent down, touching the yellow petals of a flower. A little boy on a scooter zoomed past, waving. She waved back, calling his name, Andre. He giggled and circled around again before racing off down the block. Late afternoon, Marlene headed home to prepare for Jackson's arrival. She filled a large pot with water and added vegetable soup mix, letting the flavors meld on the stove. She laid out Play-Doh and colored pencils on the kitchen table, ready for their after-school time together. She loved these moments when her busy world slowed. It was just her and her son, sharing stories and drawing pictures. Jackson bounded through the door at exactly 4:30 as he always did. He tossed his backpack on the floor and ran. "To hug her, Mom," he exclaimed. "Guess what? I scored a goal today." He banged a fist into his other hand, grinning. Marlene laughed and hugged him again, her own heart soaring. "It's amazing, Jackson. You've practiced so much." He nodded, eyes sparkling, and pulled out his school papers to show her the match report. She listened intently as he described the final moments of the game, a swift pass, a clever feint, and the ball crossing the goal line. While they enjoyed soup and bread, Jackson asked her about her day. Marlene told him about Mrs. Liu's online banking triumph and the new volunteer who had joined their team. Jackson asked thoughtful questions, just like his mother. After they ate, he set the table for dishes and dried the bowls while Marlene washed them. Then they settled on the couch, Jackson leaning against her side, and watched an old cartoon, their favorite, a silly show with talking animals that never failed to make them both laugh. In the fading light of evening, they walked down to the park. Behind their house, the playground was empty, the swings swaying in the breeze. Jackson ran to the monkey bars while Marlene sat on a bench, watching him climb and swing with ease. She remembered when he was little, how he had trembled at the thought of being high off the ground. Now he laughed as he soared from bar to bar. She felt a surge of pride. This boy so brave and kind was hers to guide, to love, to protect. When twilight settled, they headed home. Marlene tucked Jackson into bed, pulling the soft blanket up to his chin. He held his book in one hand, ready for her to read. She opened it to the next chapter and read in her gentle voice, her words carrying him into dreamland. His lids grew heavy, and he drifted off, a peaceful smile on his face. Marlene stood by the doorway, watching him sleep. She felt both tired and fulfilled. Her life was full of purpose. One moment spent teaching a neighbor how to use a computer. The next spent cheering on her son at soccer. The next spent lost in the pages of a bedtime story. She turned off the light and tiptoed back to the kitchen. She refilled her coffee mug for the next morning and laid out her papers again, ready for another day of making a difference. Outside, the city lights twinkled and the hum of night traffic drifted through the open window. Marlene closed her eyes for a moment and breathed in the sound of possibilities. Tomorrow, she would rise again before dawn, and her day would begin anew. But for now, she savored the quiet pride of knowing she was more than just a mother. She was a mentor, a leader, and a beacon of hope for all those who crossed her path. And at the heart of it all was Jackson, her adopted son, whose love reached beyond skin and race to fill her life with boundless meaning. Marlene woke to the sound of her cell phone vibrating softly on the nightstand. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and saw the time. 5:45 a.m. Her heart sank when she remembered yesterday's accident. She swung her legs out of bed, her body aching. As she shifted, the sharp electric pain in her lower back reminded her that her life had changed in an instant. Her husband, Thomas, was already in the kitchen. He stood by the window, chopping vegetables for breakfast. His broad shoulders slumped. As he worked, worry lines around his eyes. When Marlene entered, he turned and offered her a small, sad smile. "Good morning, love," he said quietly. Marlene forced a smile back. "Morning." She moved slowly, each step reminding her that she could no longer stand or walk without help. Thomas set a plate of scrambled eggs and toast on her bedside table. He helped her shift to a wheelchair that sat next to the bed. She reached for the plate, but her hands trembled. Thomas gently steadied her, pushing the plate into her lap. She ate in silence, focusing on the taste of eggs tinged with salt and pepper. Food had always given her strength when she needed it most. Today, she needed every bite. After breakfast, Thomas wheeled her into the living room. Marlene's eyes fell on the empty spot near the window where her yoga mat used to lie. She missed the morning stretches that kept her muscles strong. Now, her wheelchair replaced that space, a reminder of her limits. "The therapist will be here soon," Thomas said, checking his watch. "She said she can start with gentle movements today."
Marlene nodded.
She knew therapy was her path. to regaining some strength, she wanted independence. Back simple things like walking Jackson to the bus stop, kneeling to tie her shoes, or climbing the stairs to her office. Those small freedoms meant everything. Soon there was a knock at the door. The therapist, a kind woman named Carla, entered with a bright smile. She introduced herself to Thomas and Marlene, then began unpacking her bag, gloves, exercise bands, and small foam blocks. "Good morning, Marlene," Carla said cheerfully. "Ready to get started?" Marlene took a deep breath. "Yes," Carla guided her through gentle stretches, lifting her arms, bending her head slowly from side to side, and squeezing foam blocks between her knees. Marlene felt tension in muscles she hadn't used fully since the accident. Carla counted each rep patiently, encouraging Marlene to breathe through the discomfort. After half an hour, Carla switched to leg exercises. She placed a soft band around Marlene's ankles and had her push outward, then pull inward. Marlene gritted her teeth, focusing on each movement. Tears welled in her eyes when she realized how hard even basic motions had become. Carla noticed. "You're doing great, Marlene. This is tough, but each little success matters. We'll get there." Marlene nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Carla gently wiped them away. Therapy ended after another 20 minutes. Lane felt exhausted, every muscle in her body trembling. But she also felt a spark of hope. This was the first step toward rebuilding her life. Thomas helped her back to the wheelchair and wheeled her into the kitchen, where he handed her a glass of water. She sipped gratefully, then looked at him. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you." Later, the day continued with small tasks. Marlene checked her email on her laptop, mounted on an adjustable stand. She read messages from the community center, asking about upcoming events. She typed quick replies, thanking volunteers and confirming schedules. Her mind still buzzed with ideas. A neighborhood cleanup on Saturday, a fundraiser for school supplies next month. She loved planning. Even if she could no longer navigate the streets herself, she could still guide others. At noon, the doorbell rang. Jackson returned from school early. His bus had broken down, and a neighbor gave him a ride home. He came in smiling, backpack in hand. He ran to her and hugged her tightly. "Mom, I missed you." Marlene hugged him back, fighting tears. "I missed you too, sweetheart." He looked at her wheelchair and then her face. "How are you doing?" She managed a small laugh. "Better now that you're here." He sat beside her, pulling a picture he had drawn that morning from his backpack. It showed Marlene and Jackson holding hands, walking in the park, the sun shining above. Jackson handed it to her proudly. "I drew this for you." Marlene's chest tightened with emotion. She looked at the drawing, their happy faces, the green grass, the bright yellow sun, and felt warmth in her heart. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you." After lunch sandwiches and fruit, Jackson helped with simple chores. He loaded dishes into the dishwasher while Marlene rinsed them. Then he wiped down the table and fed their cat Whiskers. Marlene watched him work, amazed at how grown-up he seemed overnight. "Do you have homework?" she asked. He nodded and pulled out math worksheets and a history packet. She wheeled herself to the table and set the laptop to show his assignments. Jackson worked on algebra problems, and Marlene coached him through each equation, his brow furrowed in concentration, but with her gentle guidance. He solved each problem and beamed with pride. After homework, they settled on the couch for a short break. Jackson grabbed a board game from the shelf. They played checkers, laughing. At each tricky move, Jackson teased, "I'm going to beat you this time." Marlene reached out and moved a piece, countered his move, and won by one. Jackson mocked, pouted, but smiled. Rematch tomorrow. As afternoon light faded, Marlene grew tired. She asked Jackson to wheel her outside to the front porch. The air was cool, and cicadas buzzed in the trees. Neighbors passed by, some offering waves, others stopping to chat. Double quotes. "Hi, Marlene," said Mrs. Patel. "How are you feeling today?" Marlene smiled, hanging in there. Mrs. Patel offered fresh lemons and basil from her garden. Jackson grabbed them gratefully, promising to Bring them inside to make lemonade? Small acts like these reminded Marlene how much the community cared. As evening approached, Thomas returned from work. He greeted his son and wife, then prepared dinner while Marlene and Jackson set the table. They ate together, pasta, salad, and warm garlic bread. Conversation flowed as Lee Jackson's school stories. Thomas's day at the auto shop. Marlene's plans for tomorrow's meeting with City Council after dinner. Marlene felt drained. She leaned back in her wheelchair and closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and saw Jackson staring at her with concern. "You okay, Mom?" She nodded. "Just tired." He took her hand. "I'll read to you tonight, like always." Marlene's heart lifted. They moved to her bedroom, and Jackson sat beside her in a small chair, book in hand. He began to read the next chapter of their favorite story. His voice was soft and steady, weaving images of adventure and friendship. Marlene closed her eyes and let the words carry her away. Later, when Jackson finished, he kissed her cheek and whispered, "Good night, Mom." Marlene watched him walk to his room. She reached out for her cell phone, sending a quick email to the community center. "I will join tomorrow's meeting. Please prepare the report on streetlight repairs." She placed the phone down and took a deep breath. Her body ached, but her spirit burned bright. She reminded herself that setbacks were part of life, and strength grew when tested. She closed her eyes, the vibrations of Jackson's story still echoing in her mind, and drifted into sleep, ready to face another day, one small victory at a time. Marlene's first morning at home after the accident felt strange and heavy. The sun peeked through the curtains, but she did not feel its warmth. Instead, she felt the weight of her wheelchair straps and the ache in her back that told her life had changed. She heard birds singing outside but could not reach the window to open it. Her arms ached from the therapy exercises, and her heart twisted at the thought of all she could no longer do on her own. She took a deep breath and reached for the call button beside her bed. Thomas appeared quickly, concern written on his face. He helped her into her wheelchair, securing her seatbelt and adjusting the cushions beneath her. He wheeled her through the hallway and into the kitchen. The familiar smell of cooking eased her nerves a little. Thomas had made oatmeal with fresh fruit, her favorite. She nodded in thanks. When he placed the bowl in her lap, she touched his hand and managed a small smile. After breakfast, Thomas wheeled her to the living room. Marlene's eyes landed on the stairs leading to her office on the second floor. She used to bound up those steps each morning, eager to plan the day's work. Now, those stairs were a mountain she could not climb. She felt tears welling in her eyes and turned away so Thomas would not see. Guided her gently, setting her down before the TV. He changed the channel to a nature program. Knowing she loved watching birds in flight, mid-morning, her therapist Carla arrived again. She carried a different bag this time, larger, filled with new tools, a small hand cycle, a foam roller, and more bands to stretch with. Carla greeted Marlene with her bright smile and set to work. "Today we'll try something a bit harder," she said, placing the hand cycle in front of Marlene. "This will help strengthen your arms and improve circulation." Marlene felt a rush of determination. She clasped her hands on the pedals and turned them slowly at first, then faster as the rubber wheels spun. She panted, her arms trembling, but she did not stop. Carla counted each rotation, praised her effort, and encouraged her to push a little more. By the time 10 minutes passed, Marlene's arms burned, but she felt a small spark of triumph. She had moved further than yesterday. Next, Carla brought out a foam roller. She instructed Marlene to lean her back against it and roll from side to side. Marlene hesitated. Each movement hurt, but she remembered Thomas's gentle voice and Jackson's brave eyes. With a deep breath, she began. The foam roller shifted beneath her, massaging tight muscles. Tears slipped down her cheeks as old fears and sadness surfaced. Carla paused the exercise and offered a tissue. "It's okay to feel this," she said softly. "Healing is more than physical." Marlene nodded, wiping her eyes. She realized this process was as much about facing loss as it was about rebuilding strength. She braced herself and continued the rolling, slower now, more thoughtful. When they finished, Carla gave her a warm hug. "You are stronger than you know," she said. "After therapy, Thomas wheeled Marlene to her home office, an accessible desk. Where her laptop sat, Marlene opened her email inbox. Messages lay waiting, questions from volunteers, requests from city officials, news about upcoming events. She read each one carefully and typed responses with practiced ease. She may not be able to travel to meetings right now, but she could still guide her team. She arranged a video call for the next afternoon, wanting to see their faces and share updates. For lunch, Jackson came home early again. The bus driver had called to say a traffic jam delayed them, so Jackson stopped at a neighbor's house for a ride. He burst into the kitchen, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad," he said, planting kisses on both cheeks. He carried a bag of fresh spinach from his school's garden club. "We have extra," he said. I thought. "We could use it in soup." Marlene felt her heart lift. She reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said. She and Thomas prepared a simple soup with tomatoes, spinach, and beans, while Jackson set the table. He even wheeled Marlene's wheelchair to the island so she could watch them cook. The three of them chatted about Jackson's day, a science experiment, a funny story from math class, a new friend on the basketball court. After lunch, Jackson asked if he could help with chores. He unloaded the dishwasher, emptied the trash, and swept the kitchen floor. Marlene watched him work, pride glowing in her chest. This boy, so full of care, was growing up too fast. She offered him tissues to wipe sweat from his brow. He laughed and said he would help her again later. In the afternoon, Marlene faced a challenge. She needed to go to the basement to find old files for a grant application. The basement door sat at the bottom of a narrow hallway, its steps out of reach. She felt a wave of frustration. Thomas was at the auto shop, and Carla was not due back until next week. Marlene did not want to ask a stranger for help, but she could not ignore the deadline. She opened her laptop and sent a quick message to her neighbor, Mr. Harris, an elderly man who often dropped by to chat. Within minutes, he knocked on the door, tools in hand. When he saw Marlene's expression, he nodded without words. He wheeled her to the door, removed the safety gate, and carried her wheelchair up the stairs. He helped her into the basement and adjusted a portable ramp so she could cross the threshold. Inside, Marlene found dusty boxes of papers and pulled them down one by one. Mr. Harris sat nearby, handing her files and folders. She spread them across a foldable table and sorted through them, ignoring the musty smell. Jackson arrived mid-afternoon after basketball practice, a towel around his neck and juices in his hand. He greeted Mr. Harris and asked if he could help. Mr. Harris smiled and ruffled Jackson's hair. Together, they lifted heavy binders so Marlene could photograph their contents with her phone. By the time the ramp was put away and the wheelchair returned downstairs, Marlene had everything she needed. She hugged Mr. Harris and thanked him. He waved off her thanks, saying, "Just keep doing what you do." Marlene felt tears in her eyes.
Oh.
Even in pain, she could rely on her community. That evening, after dinner and bedtime routines, Marlene sat alone in the living room. Thomas and Jackson had gone to bed early after a busy day. She sank into the sofa, exhausted. Her body ached from therapy, from cooking, from the small tasks she once took for granted. But her mind buzzed with gratitude for her husband's quiet strength, her son's unwavering help, and the neighbors who refused to let her struggle alone. She opened her video call application and logged in to the community meeting. Faces appeared on the screen, volunteers in their kitchens, parents at their desks, even Carla calling in after work. Marlene greeted them, her voice steady but warm. She shared updates on the grant files, discussed scheduling for the upcoming park cleanup, and assigned tasks. She watched as people nodded, typed messages, and smiled back. For a moment, she forgot her pain and saw only purpose. After the call ended, Marlene closed her laptop and leaned back. She rubbed her sore arms and legs, thinking of tomorrow's therapy session. She guessed it would be hard again. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that each challenge was a step forward. She remembered Jackson's drawing of them walking in the park. She pictured herself on the grass, the sun above. Wheels and all. She stood up in her wheelchair, wheeled herself to the window, and looked out at the empty street. A faint breeze rustled the leaves of a tree. She smiled and whispered, "I will. Find a new way." She turned and wheeled back to the sofa. Her body might feel broken in parts, but her spirit remained whole. She pressed her hand to her heart and felt its steady beat, ready to carry her into the next day's journey. Marlene woke to a soft tap on her bedroom door. It was Jackson, holding a small notebook. His eyes were bright with excitement. "Mom," he said, stepping inside, "I have something to show you." He climbed onto the chair beside her bed and opened the notebook to a hand-drawn flyer. In bold letters he had written, "Benefit Concert for Marlene's Wheelchair Sports League." Marlene traced the letters with her finger. She felt a mix of surprise and pride. "You made this?" she asked softly. Jackson nodded vigorously. "I want everyone to help," he said. "Your friends, my friends, the whole neighborhood. We can raise money for sports chairs and maybe more." Marlene swallowed hard. She had always been the one organizing events, not the one being helped. She looked at her son's determined face and felt both joy and fear. Could she accept this gift without feeling embarrassed? Jackson saw her hesitation. He reached out and squeezed her hand. "You taught me to help others," he reminded her. "Now it's my turn." Marlene closed her eyes and nodded. She let him hug her, breathing in the hopeful warmth he offered. That afternoon, Jackson got to work. He visited neighbors with Marlene's wheelchair and the flyer, asking if they would perform at the concert or donate supplies. He talked to his school music teacher, who agreed to let the school choir sing a few songs. He knocked on the door of the local church, where the pastor promised the building for one evening. He met with the teen jazz band who practiced in the park and convinced them to volunteer their time. Everywhere Jackson went, people smiled and said, "Of course, for Marlene." Each promise made his heart swell, recorded names in his notebook, checking each one with care. Marlene watched from her office window as Jackson rolled down the sidewalk, his notebook clutched under his arm. She felt a mix of awe and worry. Planning a concert was no small feat. Would people show up? Could they raise enough money? She turned back to her computer and typed a message to the volunteers. "Thank you all for joining us. Let's make this night special." Over the next few days, the community center buzzed with activity. Volunteers painted signs, tested microphones, and hung strings of lights in the hall. Jackson came each day after school to help set chairs and arrange tables. He carried boxes of water bottles and snack bags, always asking where the next load should go. Marlene coached him from her wheelchair, offering directions and notes. Together, they worked side by side, mother and son united in purpose. On the morning of the concert, Marlene felt jittery. She dressed in her favorite blue blouse and black slacks, wanting to look her best. Thomas wheeled her to the church hall, where a red carpet led to the stage. Colored lights twinkled overhead, and a long table near the entrance held baskets of raffle prizes, gift cards, homemade bread, hand-knit scarves. Jackson stood beside the table, greeting guests as they arrived. People hugged Marlene as they walked in. The choir voices drifted softly through the room. Friends from the basketball team, neighbors who had received help from Marlene, and new faces she did not recognize, all gathered to support her. She felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. This was not the event she had planned for herself. It was a gift born from her son's love and the community's gratitude. Jackson tapped the microphone. The room hushed. He stood on a small riser so everyone could see him.
"Thank you all,"
he said, his voice clear and confident. "This concert is for my mom, Marlene Jenkins. She taught me how to care, how to give, and how to lead. I want to give back." He smiled at Marlene, who nodded and offered him an encouraging wave. The choir began with a gentle song about hope.
"I'll lead."
Marlene closed her eyes and let the harmonies wash over her. Next, the jazz band took the stage, filling the room with bright horns and swinging rhythms. Guests tapped their feet and swayed in their seats. Between songs, Jackson introduced each group, sharing why they mattered to his mother's life and work. Halfway through the evening, Jackson wheeled Marlene to the front of the room. He guided her onto the stage, where a large sheet covered something tall and narrow. The lights dimmed. When Mom fell, she lost more than her ability to walk. She lost hope that she could do the things she loved. But she never stopped believing in others. Tonight, we want to help her believe in herself again. He grabbed the edge of the sheet and pulled it away. Murmurs ran through the audience as they saw a bright purple adaptive sports chair, lightweight, with special wheels and a sturdy frame for outdoor play. Small plaque on the chair read, "For Marlene Jenkins, from your community with love." Lane gasped. Her hands flew to her mouth. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she took in the chair's sleek design and bold color. She looked at Jackson. "You did this?" she whispered. He nodded, eyes shining. She turned to the crowd, voice shaking. "Thank you, everyone. This means more than you know." The room erupted in applause. Friends rushed forward to hug her, to touch the chair, to congratulate Jackson on his hard work. Marlene felt a tide of emotion, grief for all she had lost, gratitude for all she had gained. She imagined herself on that chair, racing down the basketball court, cheering on her team, teaching kids how to play again. She breathed in deeply, feeling her heart fill with new purpose. The rest of the night passed in a joyful blur. People bid on raffle prizes, laughter filled the air, and music played on. Marlene sat in her purple chair, clapping along and smiling, as if her soul had been set free. Jackson stayed close by, proud and watchful, making sure his mother was celebrated. First and foremost, after the concert ended, guests lingered, reluctant to leave. Jackson and Marlene posed for photos, the purple chair at the center of each frame. Thomas wrapped his arms around them both, his eyes moist. Friends promised to come to the first wheelchair basketball game, and neighbors offered rides to practice sessions. Marlene realized that her accident had opened doors to new connections and deeper bonds she had never imagined. That night, as they rolled out of the church and into the cool air, Marlene felt lighter than she had in weeks. She sank into the chair's cushioned seat and looked up at the streetlights they had fought so long to install. She remembered how she once worked tirelessly to make simple changes in the neighborhood. Now, it was Jackson leading the way, powered by her past lessons, guiding them both into a brighter future. At home, after Jackson tucked her into bed, he kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm proud of you, Mom." Replied, "I'm proud of you too." As she drifted to sleep, her mind replayed the night's music and laughter, the shining purple chair, and most of all, her son's brave heart. She knew the road ahead would still be hard, but she also knew she would never travel it alone again. Marlene woke to the sound of birds outside her window. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, painting soft patterns on her bedroom wall. She stretched her arms, feeling the steady strength in her shoulders and back. The purple sports chair sat near her bed, its bright color a reminder of the concert night and all it had brought. She smiled as she thought of today's plan, the first practice session of the new wheelchair basketball league. After a quick breakfast Greek yogurt with honey and fresh berries, she wheeled herself into the living room. Jackson was all ready. They're flipping through a notebook full of drawings and schedules. When Marlene entered, he looked up and grinned. "Good morning, Coach Jenkins," he said, using the nickname everyone had given her at the concert. "Today's game day." Marlene laughed and patted his shoulder. "Game day indeed," she replied. "Let's get ready." Thomas helped Marlene into her jacket while Jackson gathered the basketballs and team jerseys. The whole family piled into the SUV, Marlene in her chair, Thomas driving, and Jackson buckled in next to her with his trusty notebook. They arrived at the community court, where a small group of men, women, and teenagers waited. Some sat in wheelchairs, others stood, all wearing bright jerseys in different colors. Marlene felt a rush of pride as they looked at her expectantly. She wheeled to the center of the court and clapped her hands lightly. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice steady and warm. "Today we start something new together. We learn teamwork, sportsmanship, and how to push our limits when life changes our plans." She introduced Jackson as her assistant. "Coach, He stepped forward and passed out jerseys, helping team members find their sizes. As people changed into their gear, Marlene scanned the court. Families who had come to support. Neighbors she had helped with computer classes, and new faces who answered her call. She felt the same excitement she once had when organizing neighborhood events, but now mixed with the thrill of competition. Practice began with warm-up drills. Marlene demonstrated how to wheel quickly in a straight line, then turn sharply at the end. She led them through stretching exercises, advising them to keep their backs straight and shoulders relaxed. She watched as one young man who trembled at first gained confidence and started wheeling with speed and skill. She clapped and cheered, seeing his face light up.
Next came passing drills.
Players formed two lines facing each other, passing the ball back and forth. Marlene moved among them, offering tips. Keep your eyes on the target. Use your wrists to guide the ball. Stay low for better balance. Jackson ran alongside her wheelchair, gathering stray balls and encouraging shy players to join in. The court echoed with laughter and the rhythmic thump of basketballs hitting the pavement. After a short break with water and bananas, they moved to shooting practice. Marlene wheeled to the hoop's edge, paused, and flung the ball toward the basket. It hit the rim, bounced once, and dropped in. The group erupted in applause. Marlene lifted her arms in triumph, feeling the chair's cushion beneath her and the hoop's net brushing her. Fingertips as the ball passed through. She didn't miss. The freedom in that moment. Jackson took a turn. He wheeled up, shot the ball with precision, and scored easily. Marlene and the group cheered him on. He blushed and waved, then turned serious and coached another player, showing how to angle the ball's path. Marlene watched him, her heart swelling with pride. He had grown from the boy who sat at her hospital bedside to a young leader in his own right. As practice ended, Marlene gathered everyone in a circle. She thanked them for their hard work and announced that they would meet every Tuesday and Thursday. Reminded them that this league was about more than sports. It was about finding strength after struggle, building community, and showing young and old that life can change, but hope endures. After everyone left, Marlene sat alone on the court with Jackson by her side. The sun was low, casting long shadows. She felt a gentle breeze and listened to the distant sounds of the neighborhood preparing for evening. Jackson leaned his head on her shoulder. "You did an amazing job, Mom," he said softly. She kissed the top of his head. "We did an amazing job," she corrected. All of us together. That night at home, Marlene opened her laptop to see messages of congratulations, emails from local newspapers wanting to cover the league's first practice, texts from city council members praising the initiative, and pictures from families who came to watch. She smiled, thinking how far she had come from organizing events on foot to leading a sports league in her chair. The accident had changed her body, but it had also opened a new chapter in her life. Before bed, she wheeled herself to the window and looked out at the quiet streetlights, installed after her first tenure as a community organizer, glowed softly. She thought of the path that led her here, teaching computer skills, running workshops, coaching basketball before the accident, then therapy sessions, community concerts, and now this league. Each step reshaped her world and deepened her bonds with others. Jackson appeared, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. He handed one to her and sat on the armrest of her chair. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug and sighed with contentment. "You know," she said, "I used to worry about losing my independence. But I see now that independence isn't just about walking on your own. It's about standing tall in your purpose, no matter your body." Jackson nodded. "You stand tall, Mom, and you pull us all up with you." Marlene felt tears in her eyes. She wiped them away and leaned back, sipping her cocoa. In that small moment, she felt complete. Mother, leader, friend, coach. Her eyes, and let the world fade into the soft hum of night. A few weeks later, on a bright Saturday morning, Marlene and Jackson arrived at the court earlier than usual. They set up folding chairs for spectators and arranged a small table with water bottles and fruit. A banner hung between 2 poles. Community Wheelchair Basketball League, first game. Marlene's chest swelled as families, friends, and neighbors rolled in. The 2 teams faced each other, each wearing different jersey colors, blue and green. Referees blew whistles, and the game began. Marlene stayed courtside, calling out encouragement and cheering every basket. Jackson kept score and made sure the teams followed the rules they had all learned together. The game was lively and competitive, but friendly. Every point scored was met with applause. In the final minutes, the score was tied. The blue team had the ball. A young teenager with determination in his eyes dribbled past an opponent, then passed to a teammate who shot. The ball arced through the air and swished through the net. The crowd erupted. Marlene raised her arms in victory, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. Jackson ran over and hugged her tight. "We did it," he whispered. "Yes," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "We did it." After the game, people gathered around Marlene. A local reporter asked for an interview. She spoke with calm confidence about the league's purpose: to build strength, unity, and joy in their community. Neighbors shared their stories of how Marlene had changed their lives, teaching, caring, and now playing beside them. She realized her journey had come full circle, from mentor to mentee, from organizer to player, from teacher to teammate. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of gold and pink, Marlene wheeled herself to the center of the court. She raised her arms and let the colors of the sky wash over her. Jackson joined her, and they faced the horizon together. In that peaceful moment, she felt gratitude for every challenge and triumph that shaped her story. She squeezed her son's hand and whispered, "Thank you for walking with me." Jackson smiled. "Thank you for leading the way." Together, they sat in silence, watching daylight fade and stars begin to appear. Wheels and all, they had found their path forward side by side, heart by heart, building a legacy of hope and strength that would carry on long after the game ended.